Miss Chiori?
Okay, we're talking about Chiori. Yo, subscribe! It is February 16th, 2024. We do not know if Chiori will change this Monday, but in case she doesn't, we're recording this now. What does Chiori do? We gotta start here. All right, Chiori, off-field Geo DPS. She, as a Geo character, she wants to play with at least one of the Geo character. There is an additional mechanic that we will kind of talk about later. She does elemental skill damage from her def and attack. When there is a Geo construct, a second instance of Chiori's elemental skill will be placed near the active character. Do you like Albedo? If you like Albedo, congrats, you like Chiori. She's a better Albedo. Yes, Chiori uses attack and def. Attack! Wow. Because there is the possibility for her to place one doll or two dolls, Chiori's damage dual scales with attack and def. Chiori can use both attack and def buffs to increase her damage, even though she does not snapshot. This means sets like Tenacity or Bless that you would play to support your on-field DPS also buff Chiori's damage. Additionally, worth mentioning, while Goro's primary def increase from his elemental skill is only for the on-field character, the 25 def percent from his Ascension passive and the crit damage from his C6 do apply off-field. Additionally, when Chiori's second doll is summoned through the presence of a Geo construct or C1, this causes her total rotation damage to increase by about 45%. The remainder of Chiori's damage comes from her elemental burst, should you choose to use it, and her tag out mechanic, known as the tailoring state. Umbrella warfare, I guess. Tailoring. After using Chiori's elemental skill, she will enter the tailoring state. When she is in the tailoring state, this is already out of date. Okay, after using her elemental skill, Chiori enters the tailoring state. When tailoring is active and you input her elemental skill command again, Chiori will U-turn into the next party member or volt switch or parting shot and allow 2 coordinated attacks to be triggered for over the next 8 seconds with a minimum of 2 seconds between them. This is only on normal charge attacks, doesn't really matter. This is a significant portion of her damage. It ends up being about 20% or 1/3 of her damage. I do not remember off the top of my head. If you do not tag out, or if Chiori attempts to use her normal attack, she will instead have a Geo infusion for the next 5 seconds. Basically, always tag out unless you really want to play Chiori as an on-field DPS. Can Chiori be an on-field DPS? Yeah, but it's not great. But she still can be. There are buffs you can do into it. Albedo? Damage difference between Chiori and Albedo varies by multiple factors, but generally speaking, Chiori will always outdamage Albedo. The time when they are closest is when Albedo has a Goro buff and Chiori is unable to summon her second doll. Otherwise, only one doll Chiori will just straight up outperform Albedo with no buffs. That's life, I guess. They can be played together, however, Albedo is extremely dependent on Goro to do damage. When 3 out of 4 units in your team are fixed, you don't have a lot of options. There are some, but you can only be wheelchaired so hard. Should you build ER? I cannot recommend building ER, but if you really wanted to burst every rotation, build about 120 or 130. I just don't recommend it. Weapons. Urogoku Rensei. This is Chiori's 5-star weapon. Oh my god, it's her best in slot? Who could have figured that out? It gives crit damage, def, E-skill damage, normal attack, charge attack damage for C6. It's pretty cool. No, this weapon is not better than other characters' 5-star weapons on them. But it is Albedo's best in slot weapon now. By a very solid, drum roll please, 2.7%. This weapon is 2.7% better than Spindle. Her next up weapon though, Primordial Jade Cutter. If you have this, just use it, it's good. Worth mentioning, Chiori is a crit rate Ascension character, so you may run into build difficulties, but because it gives attack, and it's low base, it's actually very good for Chiori, because Chiori has dual scaling damage on def and attack. So the low base is good for her def part, and the little bit of attack, it's just something. There is always the Battle Pass option. There is Wolffang. This weapon gives crit rate and damage percent. Ignore the additional elemental skill and burst crit rate, depending on multi-hits, because you cannot use it. You will always E-skill and immediately tag out. You get 1 stack, and that's it. But hey, it's very good anyway. But if you never get hit and don't ever play Farina, congrats. You can use Harbinger Dawn. On paper, this is Chiori is best in slot 4-star weapon despite being a 3-star. If you can deal with the passive of always being above 90%. But if you were playing 2 years ago, do you remember Albedo's second event weapon? Spindle is actually very good on Chiori. It will have damage inconsistency depending on when her dolls hit, which depends on when they're summoned and their distance from the enemy. But if the 2 dolls hit simultaneously, this weapon it's just incredible. Let's talk about artifacts. You've got 2 options. Everything else is at least 10% worse. Your 2 options are Golden Troop. It's a very good general set that you should really be farming if you haven't already farmed it. Merchant Hunter is incredible. And Golden Troop is very similarly just incredible. But if you want to use her burst, you're going to want to use Husk of Opulent Dreams. Husk is very competitive with Golden Troop on Chiori and can perform slightly better when you're not playing with Goro. More importantly, though, Husk is available from the Strongbox. Strongbox artifacts have a higher likelihood of being 4-liners, so if you have gone out of your way to Strongbox and farm for Husk, Husk will very likely be your best in slot Chiori set, just because of the 4-liner difference. Additionally, whenever you use her burst, play her on field or pull C6, it is by far her best in slot. But honestly, just use Troop. Main stats, Def Sands, Def for Geo, Def for Crit. Pretty simple. We do need to talk about her Constellations. I'm sure you've heard a lot of buzz about Chiori's Constellations and what they do. Chiori's C1 activates her Ascension 4 passive, giving her 20 Geo damage bonus, and summons her second doll when there is another Geo character in the party. This is about a 45% damage increase for Chiori in Navia teams or teams with no constructs. This adds 0 damage in teams with an existing construct, which will primarily be Arataki Ito or Zhongli. But it still does give range increase, very similarly to Yai's C2. Chiori's second constellation, after you use her elemental burst, she summons 3 Kinu dolls. Kinu dolls do 170% of the normal doll damage. You need to burst every rotation to get the full 24% out of this. If you don't burst, or if you burst every other rotation, it'll be about 15% increase. Her C3 is E-skill damage. Buffs all her damage. All of her damage is E-skill damage. It's quite nice. Her C4 is plus 3 Kinu dolls. That's it. There's like no conditional. It's just plus 3 Kinu dolls. It's actually always 24%, unlike C2. Her C5 buffs her burst. Moving on. C6 makes Chiori's Geo normal attacks now do damage, and her elemental skill cooldown gets reduced to about 4 seconds. This constellation makes Chiori much more of a serious on-fielder than she is normally. That being said, she is playable as one normally. Noteworthy, this Geo infusion is overrideable. If you were to do something like Chongus or Bennett, you can play Chiori in other elements. Because she acts as an off-field DPS for Geo characters, we need to talk about Geo characters as a whole. So let's start with Mr. Ito. Ushi is a Geo construct whose placement can never be interrupted. What does this mean? Chiori's second doll will have absolute consistency and always be able to come out if you play Arataki Ito. There will be a problem if you fail to place Zhongli's Pillar or Albedo's Flower or Ningguang's Silk Screen. You will not get the second doll if the constructs get blown up before they're placed. Ushi will not have this problem. Very thankfully. Noelle could never. We also need to talk about the other 5-star Geo DPS. Chiori's synergy with Navia mostly boils down to just doing damage with one doll. She is arguably better than Zhongli. It is very easily arguable that she is not, but something she is better for is consistency. She will almost always generate geoparticles because her dolls are not geoconstructs. And you're also getting very consistent crystallizes because of that. Zhongli could never. Albedo, second Chiori. If you want some nostalgia, you could play Geo Resonance teams. I don't recommend it, but hey, it's a fun nostalgia trip. Albedo could never. And then Guang is Navia, but puts down a Jade screen, or a Geo construct called the Jade screen. It doesn't really make up for doing less damage than Navia, but hey, it's nice. Null is a healer. It makes it easier to play Farina compared to relying on Goro's healing. Goro is notoriously the worst healer in the game for Farina, but hey, he technically is one, and it makes Farina good in these teams anyway. Inconsistent? Yes. Effective? Still yes, because what else would you play? You could play Yellen, actually. Or Zhongli. Or Albedo if you really wanted to. Speaking of Navia teams, I have decided to endorse Plunge Navia. I've decided to say it ain't so, Mr. Streamer. Yeah, Plunge Navia is really good. Ideally, you do 4 plunges per E skill with Navia, if you're able to execute it, it's just really good. I don't know what to say. I don't know. But yeah, you can still play normal Navia teams like Bennett. You could also play Navia Triple Geo if you really want that second doll. It's not that much worse. It's kind of bad. And there is Noelle. Noelle, you can play her. Keep in mind, Noelle does not summon a Geo Construct. If you want to get the most out of Chiori, you do need to play a character who does summon a Geo Construct, such as Albedo or Zhongli. Ningguang does summon a Geo Construct. So it's just like the Navia stuff, but you get a second dude. What do I think about Chiori? A better Albedo is something that's been needed for a very long time. I wish she was even better. She feels very tame for what she provides, which is just off-field damage. She provides a satisfactory amount of it, but she doesn't really do anything else. She provides consistency, which is valuable. I wish she had some form of buff for the on-fielder or just straight up did more damage. Because she's a Geo character, she has a lot of restrictions. The thing that I disagree with is giving her further restrictions, such as the 1 versus 2 doll state, as well as her coordinated attacks not being automatic. If you swap out, you need to go out of your way to press her E skill twice. If you fail to press her E skill twice, you've lost a significant portion of her damage. If you swap out, it should know that you've swapped out and just apply the state. It's kind of whack. Hopefully they fix it. I don't know if they will. But yes, Chiori, something necessary for the last few years. I wish she came earlier or was better. I don't want to say too little too late. But it's not wrong to ask for a little more.